me if you want it, nigga. Yeah. Try me if you want it, nigga.
This is Tico Tre Red Pill, and this video is going to be about. This is a philosophical Tico video, but this video is going to be about standards and discipline. It's a video I've been meaning to do for a while when it comes to standards and discipline because people have been asking me to do it, so I finally got around to actually doing it. So I'm doing it under the philosophical Tico title, basically. These are all video requests. Live stream podcast video requests for all intents and purposes that I was requested to do or asked by somebody to do because they wanted my own personal opinion. So this is basically from my own personal opinion, my own personal thoughts and on the whole entire subject and matter. Because I typically do things that a devil's advocate on my channels from a devil's advocate standpoint, or I take it from a fatherly approach. So they want my personal take on it. Without further ado, the topics of philosophical Tico 2 are going to be discipline and standards. The thing about standards and discipline that I've always noticed, especially in the Western world, is in the Western world, when it comes to standards, it's typically frowned upon when men have standards. It's never frowned upon when women have standards, but the sad part about that is when it comes to it, it all comes down to, like I was saying, it's basically, well, let me back up a little bit. Basically, what ends up happening is typically when a man has standards, it's frowned upon. When a woman has standards, we basically say, yeah, that's reasonable. It's always good to have standards if you're a woman. Yeah. Yes, queen, yes. That's typically how we treat it. Sad part about that is when it comes down to it, everybody's supposed to have standards, especially men. Men aren't supposed to just accept any old thing. The sad part about that, men accepting any old thing is what got us in this mess in the first damn place. You should never accept anything if it's not a part of your standards or morals, and if it doesn't fall in, if it's not a part of your moral compass, or it doesn't fall into what your morals or everything is for all about anything about you is for all intents and purposes. If it's not a part of your fiber or your very being, you should never, ever, ever do anything like that. At the end of the day, you should basically be always maintaining your standards at the end of the day, whether anybody likes it or not. It doesn't matter if a woman doesn't like it. It's just her admitting to not being able to live up to your standards at the end of the day. If a woman tells you your standards are too high, I want you to look at her standards to compare your standards and realize that your standards aren't really that high. They're probably more reasonable or more attainable than most women, sadly. The sad part about that is women will complain about men having standards because that requires women to be responsible for their own actions. This is typically why women complain about men having standards, because it makes women responsible. Case in point was a story that I told about my one best friend, who's a female. Well, no, she's not really my best friend, but she was a female. She was a friend who was a female, and she's used to men, like, doing things for her, or, she's one of them women that swear up and down she's strong and independent. She's an independent woman. But she's really not. She's used to men basically doing for her, and men basically being there for her, and and catering to her every whim. Basically, it is what it is. The sad part about that is once you start losing things, you find out very quickly that person, once you start peeling back the layers of the onion, you find out very quickly from a lot of women that you're not what they claim you out to be, or you're not really who they were trying to project you out to be or say you are in the first place. Because typically women will lie to your face about how much you mean to them, when in fact how much you mean to them is whatever you bring to them or whatever your value is to them at the end of the day. Let it be money, let it be time, let it be attention, let it be sex, let it be, dick, head, whatever you want to call it, basically. That's typically the value that you bring to women at the end of the day. It's sad and true. So having no standards, making a woman responsible, by having standards, you make women responsible around you. You make everybody around you responsible by having standards. The minute they stop having standards, they can't complain, but they can complain about themselves for not being able to live up to their standards, or, they'll complain about you. They'll make like a bunch of videos about you talking about, I don't understand why you're treating me like this. I done nothing wrong and this, that, and the other. Nigga, you were below my standards. Or men do that shit too. I've noticed in the manosphere too, where like they'll make a bunch of videos about you saying, I don't understand why, you're being this way or you're acting this way, or and you're basically the same old across the board at the end of the day, sadly. The sad part about it is people don't want to be held, people don't want the responsibility. People don't want to have to be held to a high standard. People don't want to have to basically live up to any standards for that matter, for all intents and purposes. Because the sad part about that, living up to standards is very hard for people to do at the end of the day. It's not only very hard for people to do, it's more so hard for them to be able to manipulate you into doing stupid shit at the end of the day when it comes down to it. By them being able to if you don't have any standards, you're easily manipulated into doing dumb shit, or them getting what they want out of you because you don't have any standards, or your standards are too low for anything to remotely be a thing. The sad part about that is when it comes to it, what a lot of people don't do, or a lot of people do, is what they'll basically pretend as if they'll pretend or play chameleon and pretend like they're living up to your standards when in fact they're really not living up to your standards at the end of the day. It sucks, but a lot of women do it. And a lot of women will fake it till they make it. A lot of men will fake it till they make it too as well. But the neat thing about having standards is you're able to mitigate the bullshit in your life. You're able to mitigate the games, the stupidity, and the people around you. When you have standards, it makes it so that it makes it harder for women to manipulate you. It makes it harder for women to control and or make you bend or do stupid shit to you at the end of the day when you have these standards. It doesn't matter what government's what, basically. If you have standards, you live by those standards, and you don't bend or capitulate and or put aside those standards to let somebody over or in, you typically very rarely run into a problem with anything like that, sadly. Now, when you run into problems, you might run into a problem, but typically those problems are easily shoot away or can easily disappear for all intents and purposes based on your standards. A thing that I notice about women, on the other hand, is, when it comes to discipline, I always talk about being able to have discipline as a man over your own body, basically. Being able to control your urges and your wants and your needs at the end of the day, and knowing the difference between wants and needs. The sad part about that, there's a lot of men that can't control their biology, basically, and they do stupid shit where they'll basically bang anything, or they're willing to accept anything woman, or they're willing to date bottom shelf women, basically, because they want to be happy, or they want to feel love, or they want to put their dick in something, basically, or they want a nice hole to put their dick in, basically, a nice warm hole to put their dick in. It's sad and it's true, but the sad part about that is the more discipline you have, the better quality of women you'll actually get. The more discipline you have with yourself as a man, you find out very quickly how many people start turning their heads towards you, and you start becoming a much more serious person, and more people will take you seriously, sadly. The sad part about that, the sad part about that is when it comes down to it, a lot of people don't have standards, a lot of people don't have discipline, and a lot of people don't typically have any of the things in their lives to actually control and or make it so they're disciplined, make it so they actually have discipline to deal with stupidity or mitigate stupidity or or to be able to like push aside stupidity going on in your face. A lot of men can't control their urges, in other words, is what I'm trying to say. And a lot of men fall into traps based on the fact that they can't control their urges. It's basically like the old Bond trope, basically. Women are going to be the death of Bond, basically. The sad part about that is it came close multiple times for Bond to die based on a woman, sadly, in those movies, the movie franchise. But typically men, because they're so controlled by their own sexual urges, they typically have a problem with trying to, you know, avoiding stupidity and avoiding the dumb shit, basically, and the fuckery that is relationships. Or as I say, you call it trash can water, I call it hot dumpster juice, or dumpster juice in general. But typically with a lot of people, they typically, yeah, that's right. It's having no standards is a path to failure, most definitely. The neat thing about having discipline is you're able to overcome without having to overcompensate or overindulge or overdo anything to actually be a better human being. Having discipline is always a great thing. Having discipline, people say, well, it's hard to do this. Well, anybody that say it's hard to do something don't want to do it, basically. That's a nice way of saying I can't or I don't want to. Or I don't feel, no, let me rephrase that. Not I can't. It's more or less a nice way of saying I don't want to, or I'm too lazy to, or, I like my pleasure over my own personal, personal safety or health, basically, sadly. And the sad part about that, there's a lot of people who do. And there's a lot of people that are easily manipulated by women walking by them or women doing simple shit in front of them to a certain extent. There's a lot of men in the manosphere that'll sit here and say, how ugly a woman is and how fat this woman is and how this, that, and the other this woman is. But these same men will turn around and be trying to smash that woman, basically. And it's like, dude, where are your freaking standards at? Like, you're talking all this trash on how big this woman is or how ugly this woman is or how any of this stuff, but behind closed doors, you're literally trying to smash the same type of woman that you're talking trash on. You're trying to down, sadly. Like, think about that. What's up, Shinobi One? What's up, Baron Yam? What's up, MGTOW to win? But the sad part about that is when you do it, you have to basically look at yourself. It's basically like the men who used to go on the Maury show. What'll say, oh, she's a hoe Maury, she's this, that, and the other Maury, she's this, that, and the other Maury. But the sad part about that is the bottom line is you're still banging the woman. You called her a hoe, so technically that makes you a hoe. If you're going to sleep with somebody like that, you can't really be calling out their name if you're willing to sleep with them because that makes you the same thing that they are. You basically are what you sleep with, or you are what you're willing to do, or you are what you're willing to lower your inhibitions to do to bang, basically. Like the one famous joke is, every man has that one woman who they're ashamed of banging. The sad part about that in this day and age, a lot of men have multiple women that they're ashamed of banging, basically. Or, that they got to hide and not talk about banging. It's so sad. Like, because of the lack of standards and the lack of discipline that men have these days, it's like they have to stick their dick in it. They have to put they need this warm, wet hole to put their dick in, basically. And it's the saddest, worst, most pathetic thing in the whole entire world to watch. Like, I don't have very high standards. Some people say I have very high standards, but when it comes to women, when it comes to my standards, when it comes to dating women, women will tell you, oh, your standards are so high. This is coming from a woman with a list of 100 things that she needs in a man, basically. But my standards are high. I always find it funny how that works. You're never going to find a woman because your standards are too high. It's like, really? Really? And shows how much you actually know about my life, sadly. But the sad part about it is when it comes to it, we always have these things and always have these problems with women. We always had these problems with women always trying to guilt or shame a man for having standards, or they try to frame it as them being racist or phobic or or shaming, fat shaming, or any of the above, or all the above, or any of the above, basically. And it's sad. It's like, and it's like the saddest thing in the world. And a lot of men fall for this stuff, and you shouldn't have to fall for this as a man because you're a man. And the sad part about that, at the end of the day, there's 2 million more. There's way more than 2 million more women on Earth, on the face of this Earth, than there is men on the face of this Earth. So you have options. You have multiple options. Some men even have like 10, 20, 30 options. Other men have about like anywhere between 1 to 3 options, basically. Some only have 1 option. So, and typically the option that you're given is basically the option you're given, you're probably overlooking bags, basically. The sad part about that. It's kind of like when you go to school with the school nerd chick, basically. If you actually put her in some different clothes, she would be one of the hottest chicks, the most popular chick in school, sadly. It is what it is. But the sad part about that is nobody wants to take the time to actually find out or realize that that nerd is actually the most hottest chick in school, or can be the most prettiest girl in school, sadly. The irony to it is when it comes to women, the reason why women always fuck with men's standards or discipline is because they have low self-esteem themselves at the end of the day. The cold hard truth is reason why women complain about men having standards is because their self-esteem is low, or in the dumpster or in the basement, basically. Typically the women that will complain about you having standards are the women that have low self-esteem. When they have low self-esteem, they'll complain more about you having standards. When a woman doesn't have a low self-esteem, she won't complain about you having standards. She might give you a head nod, or she might roll her eyes at you, sadly. Typically how it works. The sad part about that is when it comes down to it, women themselves actually have low self-esteem. The sad part about that, the hottest, most attractive women in the world actually have a low self-esteem or a low opinion of themselves, or can be easily influenced into doing stupid shit at the end of the day via manipulation or, quote unquote, peer pressure. The sad part about it when it comes down to it is because of this, they're willing to actually, instead of living up to people's standards, their low self-esteem won't. Their self-esteem is so low, so they got to drag you down with them so they can feel like they're on your level, sadly. Or they got to be dicks to you so they can feel as though you're on your level, or they are where you are for all intents and purposes. The sad part about that, a lot of these women can't handle, a man having standards, or can't handle a man, with some class or with some dignity, that has some dignity within itself, or, have some discipline within itself, and won't accept anything, or won't accept anything less than what's good for him, or anything less than what's best for him, sadly. The sad part about that, a lot of men need to start practicing this, and they wouldn't be, if they started practicing this shit, they wouldn't be in half the messes that they're in today. They wouldn't be in half the bad shit that they're in today because of this. Because the sad part about that, at the end of the day, like I said in another video, most men who chose a bunch of women chose them because ass and tits, or what that ass looked like, or what that pussy feel like, or they wanted a warm, wet hole to stick their dick in. No matter the interpretation or, line that you use, it basically comes down to all men basically just wanted to stick their dick in a warm, wet hole, basically. Or they just wanted to stick their dick in it, or they had a nice ass, or they had some nice titties, or, they wanted to see what them lips do, stupid shit like that. This is typically what men go after and look for, sadly, because the sad part about that is that shows a man with low standards. And that's the type of man that can be easily manipulated into his own, easily manipulated or easily taken advantage of he lacks the discipline. He lacks discipline, and he lacks the ability to control his urges, and he lacks the discipline to control his urges to the point where any woman can pretty much manipulate him into doing stupid shit, or looking over the shoulder, looking at them, walk past them, and stuff like that. The sad part about that is, in public, I don't really pay women attention because they're not important to me, and they're not a part of my goal, or they're not a part of my purpose on why I'm out here in public looking stupid, basically, trying to participate in this system. I'm usually out in public because I need to get a haircut, or I'm out there because I need to go to a government building to get paperwork done for stupid shit like that, or I'm out here because, certificates or permits and building permits or business permits or things along the lines of that. If a woman's not involved in that process, then I really don't care about a woman, how a woman looks. Basically, I just want to get from point A to point B. I want to get this business taken care of. I want to get my shit handled, and I want to go on about my merry way. Sadly, a lot of men, they don't have that discipline to do so. So now they're like rubbernecking everywhere every time they see a booty or some titties. It's like all that rubbernecking just going on. It's kind of like the same rubbernecking that happens when you see an accident. Now think of that, and you see multiple accidents on each side of the street or all over the damn place. You're sitting there just looking at all the women in your eyesight, and that's typically how it works. The sad part about that, men can't, or they don't really want to control their urges, and they just act like, it's a part of my who I am as a man. No, it's not a part of who you are as a man. You're basically just saying you're thinking with your little head, though. You're thinking with your dick, basically. That's what it sounds like to me. You're just thinking with your dick. And the more you think with your dick, the more stupider you sound to me. This is typically something that pickup artists use to get you to want to go and, bang as many women as you want in life, because they use that as, well, your base nature is to bang a bunch of women and it bang women and this, that, and the other. It's like, well, if that's your self-esteem is that low where you need a bunch of women to bang so you can feel good about yourself, have at it, Haas. And that's simply how I feel about it. Like, if you ever notice, a lot of these men who are pickup artists who hit on women have low T, sadly. They have low T, or they try to work out to make it look like they do something. A lot of them have pec implants, ab implants, and shoulder implants, so they can make it look like they're all tough and they're full of T. The sad part about that, you can usually tell the difference between somebody full of T versus somebody with low T. You can tell the difference between somebody with high T and low T. The sad part about that is typically a lot of the men who are pickup artists who have low T, they typically always seem to have feminine traits about them. How they talk, how they interact with you, how they use their hands, how they do any of the stuff, basically, is typically, it's almost like a feminine trait that they possess within themselves, sadly. It's like they drink so much of the female nature Kool-Aid, they started acting like females, basically. It's typically how it works. These are the same people that will sit there and sling mud over their shoulder at you and talk shit on you on a regular basis, because it is what it is. Or these are the people that always got to overcompensate for various reasons, because they're really not marketable people, or they're really not as cool or as sexy or as tall or as big or as great as they claim they are, sadly. So they got to fling mud at you to feel better about themselves, or they got to slight you to feel better about themselves, because that's who they are. It is what it is. The sad part about that, these type of people are usually pretty short, and they suffer from Napoleon complex, or they think they got big man complex. Meanwhile, they're in a small frame. Big man complex in a small frame. Think about that. But the sad part about that is, when it comes to it, if your T was as high as you claim it was, you wouldn't have to overcompensate anything. That's the thing about having low T. You always overcompensate for your shortcomings. You don't own it like you claim you do. It's kind of like the women in the fat acceptance movement. They claim you should accept fat women, or big women and this, that, and the other. But the sad part about that, they don't believe in themselves. The same thing that goes with men in the manosphere who try to overcompensate for having no hair, or overcompensate for being short, or overcompensate for not being a pick of the litter and hitting the gym on a regular basis, so they can look like they're so they can look the part, basically. They're basically overcompensating, or driving a car, or showing off their house in their cars, or driving around in a car and this, that, and the other. They're basically all overcompensating for shit that they don't have in their lives, basically. It's basically like the midlife crisis guy. Typically, when men go through midlife crises, they go and buy something like a cherry red Corvette, or a car like a Mustang, or things along the lines that a Lamborghini Diablo, or a Porsche, whatever the fuck. Or men who go through the midlife crisis typically do this shit for all intents and purposes. And men in the manosphere who don't have high T at all, pretty much do the same damn thing, sadly. It's typically what it really is. Like, you very rarely get a genuine person in the manosphere who don't really practice the shit, or don't really, or who is who is basically just acting a straight fool, or things along the lines of that. And like, they have all this stuff so they can make themselves feel better about themselves. Like, a good example, when I buy a car, I buy it because it fits my personality. Like, I have a car that fits my assholeness. I have a car that fits my gangsterness. I have a car that fits my need for speed. I have a vehicle that fits my fucking, I don't give a damn, I'll run you over. I don't give a damn, I'll run you over. So basically, every single vehicle I own basically fits a certain personality or aspect of my life, sadly. And I don't buy vehicles because I'm going to be hot in that vehicle. I buy a vehicle because, like, a good example, the Challenger, the orange Challenger. The only reason why I bought the orange Challenger because the color's loud. Orange is loud as fuck, basically. And that's typically the type of person I am. I'm a loud as fuck motherfucker. So typically what I end up doing with it is I want it to match my personality. I want it to be who I am. I want it to fit who I am. I don't buy the black one and the red one. I don't buy the white one with the red stripes. I buy the orange one because that's who the fuck I am. Loud out there and in your fucking face. That's typically how I've always been. I don't do this fake shit on the internet, or fake like I'm kind and nice and I'm all this on the internet, when in fact I'm an asshole and I'm in your face and I'm probably going to punch you in your face and drag you, then punch you, kick you in your face, then kick out your ribs, and then punch out your teeth. Typically the type of person I am. So I buy cars that match my personality. Orange, loud and in your face. You can't really miss it. You might hear it, but you're going to fucking see it. That's typically how I always been. And that's typically what I'll always be, because that's the type of human being I am. Now, the irony to it is I barely drive that car, unlike most men who, who suffer from low T. They drive the car all the time. Or they drive the car, more than average, sadly. Or they drive the car so they can feel good about themselves. Because the sad part about that, a lot of men have a low self-esteem too within these days, and they don't have the discipline, nor do they have the knowledge, nor do they have the standards to feel good about themselves. Their standards is based on things that they buy for themselves and to feel good about themselves. Like, it's just like women or pickup artists. Good example of pickup artists. Pickup artists work on a premise that the more women you bag, the better off you'll be in life. And if you can't do that, then you should feel ashamed of yourself and you're not really a man. Now, the sad part about that, think of that when you apply to car. That's basically little dick energy, basically, at the end of the day. If you have to, or you feel the urge to want to bang this many women in your life, you have little dick energy, basically, because you need to bang women to feel happy about yourself. The sad part about that, as a man, you should feel happy about yourself doing other things or doing things that you actually like in life, sadly. Now, if you like banging women, have at a Haas. If that's what you actually really, really like, that is. But not too many men like running around, spinning shit ton of plates, because the sad part about that, let's just keep it 100. Women are annoying as fuck. Let's just keep it 100. Women are annoying as fuck. No, nobody want to spin that many fucking plates because women are annoying as fuck at the end of the day. It don't matter how much they claim they don't listen to any problems. They have to listen to somebody's problems at some point. Because the sad part about that, you just can't go around banging people and not listen to problems, because you kind of have to. No matter how many plates are being spun. The sad part about that, when a woman calls you, she knows why she's calling you, and she knows why you're answering your phone. So you're going to listen to some problems at the end of the day, whether you like it or not. Problems are going to be, you're going to have to run into our problems. Sad part about that, I'm not finna run into no fucking problems, nor do I feel like dealing with multiple women's problems to want to deal with any of that shit at the end of the day. It don't matter how cool, calm, collective, or how cool you might sound, or how pussy savvy you might sound. The sad part about that, at the end of the day, you still got to deal with somebody's problems, whether you like it or not. It's true. And they're not going to tell you this shit. They're going to try to make it as good. They're going to try to make it as appealing, as cool as it really sounds, when in fact it's really not. All it is a bunch of men that can't control their urges or impulses. This is basically why I put up the thumbnail that I put up for this video, because there's a lot of men in this world who literally act like women. They have the impulse. They lack impulse control They lack impulse control, and they buy everything that's hot and popping, basically, because they have feminine traits. They have female characteristics about them that make it so. Especially when you got the pickup artists that, that are wearing jewelry and got their nails painted. I'm not going to say any names. I'm just saying. Or you got the pickup artists that that are metrosexual, that look metrosexual, sadly. I'm not going to say any names. I think y'all know who I'm talking about. Let's just keep it 100 and keep it moving. That's typically the type of human beings that you're dealing with in this day and age. Or you got the ones that try to co-opt, certain archetypes to make, basically make them feel like they're all that in a bag of chips and they're so cool when in fact they're just basically either betas or alphas trying to pretend to be a sigma. Not going to say any names. Keeping it esoteric. But you get shit like that. Or you get men that'll pound their chest and say they're an alpha. Or you'll get men who that guy's funny. He's a funny ass nigga. Or you'll get men who will have to drive around in vehicles to seem cool or seem cooler than what they really are. Or you'll get a man that's in a relationship, whole ass relationship, who's unhappy, or his wife basically wears the pants, but he wants to swear up and down these red pill. Or you'll get, the list goes on with these motherfuckers. Or you'll get a man who basically is dating some washed up bitch who got plastic surgery, and he wants to claim that, she's the greatest thing in the world, but he has to control her into believing that she's the greatest thing in the world, or he has to manipulate her. Sadly, that's an abusive relationship, but that's neither here nor there. But the irony to it is, at the end of the day, all these people all have a low self-esteem. They have a low opinion of themselves. They have a very low self-esteem, and they can't stand on their own merits, basically. They could talk about how they got all these nice cars and nice houses and nice stuff, but the sad part about that is you're the ones who bought them. The men who impulse buy to try to fix their problems, or the very men who actually helped them pay for those new cars, those new houses, and all that great shit, basically. It's kind of like the mega churches who are the glass cathedral that's made of all glass that, that people paid to have, erected or commissioned, basically, so they can all go to church at this glass cathedral, all glass cathedral. You basically pay for the cathedral. The same thing goes for those vehicles and all these people in cars and all these people talking about, various things. You paid for that shit, basically. Their whole entire lifestyle, their vacation, their travel, all that shit you paid for. So basically, these men are nothing more than OnlyFans girls, basically. Let's just keep it 100. The sad part about that is when I go on vacation, I pay for it myself. There's no donations that come into my channel that literally have me going on vacation that somebody paid for at the end of the day. I pay for all my own vacations, and if I'm somewhere, I'm basically paying for it myself out of pocket, and I'm actually having fun doing it, sadly. I typically don't make videos when I'm traveling, if you ever notice. I always have a downtime of 2-3 days of video making, sadly, because I'm always traveling or going places or coming to and fro, sadly. Because that's basically travel time that I need to do. Then I need to, decompress or get recalibrated from the fact that I probably went through several hundred time zones to get to where I needed to go, sadly. So I don't typically make videos every day for the very reason that I'm always traveling, sadly. Now, the irony to it is with those same people, you'll run into problems with these people, and they'll always talk about how well they're doing. But the sad part about that, what they leave out is you're the reason why they're doing that well. Whereas me, I'm the reason why I'm doing as well as I'm doing, sadly. The sad part about that, like I said, I don't take donations from anybody. And if I did get donations, it would just go back to the channel anyway. 100% to the channel. 100% to equipment for the channel if I did take donations, or if I was getting donations. Or I would do some type of giveaway or a prize or something like that where I just gave back the money basically to somebody for all intents and purposes. Because I feel as though, or we use it for a man in the manosphere who's actually really down and out, sadly. If I got donations. So I would use it for the channel or the channel's vision and purpose, sadly. Is basically what I would use it for if I was to get it. I wouldn't use it for like this new house or this nice car or this Rolex watch or the stupid shit that men get themselves into. The sad part about that is you can typically tell a man's worth or weight based on the fact that if he needs to run around looking like he's in a rap video, basically, or have to ride around in a car like he's a rapper, or wear chains like he's a rapper, or act cool like he's a rapper. It's like, are you really this person, or you got to act like this person? And the sad part about that, a lot of these people always want to portray an image of who they are, but if you meet them in person, they're not. They're really not. Like me, I would tell you in a heartbeat, I'm an honest asshole. When you meet me in person, I'm probably going to be an asshole to you if I never seen you or know you, depending on who you are or what you're doing. Like a good example, I'm more likely to be nice to veterans. If you're a homeless vet or a veteran, basically, I'm more likely to be nice to veterans. Because I'm all about my veterans, and I'm all about making sure they're okay, life is good for them, and they live their life without the hassle that the government always lays at their feet when they come home. So I'm more likely to be nicer to veterans than most other people. I'm also more likely to be nicer to children or the elderly for all intents and purposes. When it comes down to our friends and family, if you really want to count them, which I really don't count them because they're friends and family and they know me, so technically I'm already going to be nice to them based on GP. But when it comes to standards, you have to have them just so you can overcome urges and stupid shit that can happen in your life, along with discipline. The discipline you have, you want to build it to a point where it's strong and you can rely on. You can be very well disciplined, and people would know that you're very disciplined. The sad part about that is there's not too many men in the manosphere that you can actually literally say that they're well disciplined. There's not too many men in the manosphere you can actually say that they have control of their faculties and their member, basically. There's not too many men in the manosphere that you can actually say are very well put together individuals who don't really need to rely on the opposite sex or anybody else to basically fill their coffers or their pockets. Sadly, at the end of the day, it's sad and it's true. But what it comes down to is you'll run into a lot of men who will sell you a pipe dream or sell you a dream or sell you some snake oil or sell you all this stuff just to get you to, feel as though you're inadequate. It's basically like the same group of men who do this shit would be like the Cosmo magazine. How to do you know you're pleasing how to please your man 100 ways. Are you fat? Take this quiz so you can see if you're fat. Are you ugly? Take this quiz so you can see if you're ugly. What type of makeup you should use. What colors you should use on certain days, this and the other. What numbers will match you. What type of clothes you should buy. This and the other. And it overwhelms you with this bullshit, basically, when in fact, that's all it really is bullshit. You really don't need all that bullshit. All you really need is yourself. You need yourself. You need standards, and you need discipline, basically, at the end of the day, so you can overcome the bullshit and the fuckery that's being thrown at you on a regular basis. If you lack those things, you lack those standards, and you lack that discipline, you're probably going to lack self-esteem. So you're going to be willing to fall for any fucking thing or try anything to basically make it so you feel better about yourself. You're willing to go as far as to wholeheartedly believe some lame on the other side of the manosphere who's nothing more than a loser that lives in her mom's basement. And the sad part about that is things that I've always noticed when it comes to shit like that is how people lack the self-awareness that they're getting themselves into the mess or lack the ability to understand why shit is actually happening to them because bitch they or want to always sling mud, but like I said, they literally live in their mom's basement and they're losers, or they have a menial job basically trying to make it sound like they're flossing basically. And it's just one of those things where, like, you got to understand what you're getting yourself into. You got to understand what's going on around you. And you got to keep your eyes open. You got to keep your wits about you in this world, man. Because if you're not disciplined, you're going to miss a lot of this shit and you're going to be used. It's kind of like the old adage, don't let nobody sell you no wooden nickels, basically. It's what it really is. That's all they're doing is selling you wooden nickels or selling you a bridge. If somebody sells you a bridge, unless it's like the county, I wouldn't buy it, basically. Or if it's a toll bridge and you own the rights to the toll bridge and own the rights to actually getting the money from the toll bridge, then I say do it. If you don't, then I wouldn't even do it, and I wouldn't even bother with it at the end of the day. You're basically just working for free at that point. But men need to start paying attention to their surroundings and other men around them that are using them and milking them for money, just like a woman would. The sad part about that, just because it's a man, just because it doesn't have any titties or pussy, that don't mean it's milking you. Sad part about that is men in this day and age will milk men just as much as women will milk men. And then act like they're helping you. It's kind of like if you buy a certain product and then it doesn't come out to be that certain product, the manufacturer or the people who sold you the product will try to downplay it or say, well, we sent it to you and you have to like it and no refund. Like, no, nigga, you sold me a fucked up product. You didn't sell me what you promised to sell me. Like, there's been times when I've seen people actually buy a certain backpack, end up with something else totally different, or end up with like a little bag, the little pouch to put your shit in. Sadly, it's like that's not what I bought, dude. That's not what I bought at all. And the sad part about that, these are the exact same tactics that a lot of these men use to get you to finance their lives. Basically, it's basically like they're no different than a Twitch thought. You know, the same Twitch thoughts that be sitting there complaining about like needing money to buy a new house, but that bitch bought a new house and was showing it off. Now she needs money to buy a new house now? Like, really? Or the Black Lives Matter chick who bought a $1.4 million house and didn't help any of the neighborhoods or communities that were affected by all this stuff that Black Lives were supposed to matter about, sadly. It went towards chapters and other things like that, but it never really went out to actual helping actual communities and neighborhoods to actually progress and grow. It went more towards her house, her $1.4 million house, sadly, and her lifestyle, her extravagant lifestyle, sadly. That's typically how a lot of this stuff works. So men need to be more aware of the shit that they do and the shit that they watch or the shit that they fall for and the shit that they buy from human beings. Because I look at it like this. If you had the male role model in your life like you're supposed to, you wouldn't fall for this shit. If you were smart about what you do in your money, you wouldn't fall for the shit. If you were a disciplined person and you had a decent self-esteem and you had some standards, you would not fall for the shit, sadly. The sad part about that is a lot of these men on here are looking for help or looking for direction, and they get used on a regular basis. Pretty much. The sad part about that is at the end of the day, a lot of men run into these problems and they wonder why shit always happens to them, or why shit never really pans out for them, or why it's always not the best course of action. Things along the lines of that, sadly. But the irony to it is the more that they focus on their lives and the more that they focus on themselves and making themselves a better human being. This is typically why the mantra on my channels are, treat yourselves like milk, do nothing but spoil yourselves. Do better by yourself and make yourself a better version of yourself. That goes for anybody, man, woman, and child, hibachi, helicopter, gay, lesbian, straight, transgender, whatever the heck you want to do, whatever the heck you want to be. Just do you and do you to the best of your ability. Make yourself a better human being at the end of the day. That's all I ever ask for. Make yourself a better human being. I don't care what you do. Don't care what you got going on. Don't care what your bedroom situation is. Don't care what your marriage is. Don't care what any of that stuff is. All I care about is you personally and making yourself a better version of you at the end of the day. This is typically why that's the mantra on my channel. Treat yourself like milk, you nothing but spoil yourselves. Make yourself the better version of you. Every day. It may not be every day, but as long as you're making improvements on yourself, slight improvements on yourself, so you can work towards a goal, that's all that fucking matters at the end of the day. A lot of men can't do this, and they rely on other men to actually do it for them, and then they end up dropping thousands and thousands of thousands, hundreds and thousands of dollars, or hundreds of dollars, or thousands of dollars on men to make them better men. And the sad part about that, the finished product isn't really a better man. It's basically a person that's a parasite, or a person you went from really needing a person to needing somebody to lead you to being led around by somebody who's just, finessing you, basically. Finessing you? I think that's the word I'm looking for in English. Yeah. Finessing you. You basically are being led around by somebody finessing you into stupid shit, sadly. And you never want to be the guy to being finessed into stupid shit. You want to always be the guy who's not being finessed and got your wits about you and don't fall for shit like what Wen said here, basically. I got 30 acres, a swampland in Arizona for sale for $5. Like, typically, this is a lot of the men in the manosphere who will sell you a pipe dream, sadly. It's all about you. It's making yourself a better version of you, sadly. It don't matter what the hell else is going on in your life or what the hell else is everybody else is doing. It's all about you. Fuck what everybody else is doing. How can this benefit you to make yourself a better human being? Make yourself a better person. Get yourself a better life. Get yourself out of the rut. Keep you from committing suicide if at all possible, sadly. Because the irony to it is a lot of these men are down and out and they're downtrodden. They're willing to try anything. It's basically like a diet trend. I tried all the diets. Okay, why? That's basically how I look at people when they say that. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, no. Why? Because the sad part about that is a lot of people are willing to do this and put themselves in harm's way or follow all these things, and you're basically just forking over money to these various diet trends or various weight loss programs. And the sad part about that is, at the end of the day, it all comes down to a change in you and what you're willing to do. It's sad, but it's true. It's kind of like the lazy people who expect to lose weight and don't understand why they keep on gaining weight, but the most exercise they do is, plate to mouth, basically. Plate to mouth, or bowl to mouth, basically. That's the most exercising they do in a day, and they expect to lose weight and, live this lifestyle, or they'll eat the food, but they don't do the exercises or do the actual calorie count that they need to do so they can lose weight. Or they'll eat the food and they'll overindulge in that food because it's supposedly healthy, so therefore they shouldn't have to worry about gaining weight, and they do gain weight because of the empty or garbage carbs in the food. What I'm basically saying is, just because somebody's riding around flashy in a car, just because somebody has a girlfriend who has a shit ton of plastic surgery, who they claim is listening to them, that's basically being manipulated into actually listening to them, or just in an abusive relationship in general, or, a man who has a wife who his wife pretty much runs the damn thing, or a man who basically has to walk around like he got a chip on his shoulder because he's short as fuck, or a guy that has to, profess how much of an alpha he is online when in fact he's really not, or a black guy with a bald head that walk around with a chip on his shoulder acting like he's tough, but he wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. Shit like this, or a guy that has to ride around in cars to basically make you feel as though, he's also obviously successful because he's riding around in a vehicle right now and he's all that in a bag of chips. Like, you do realize you financed his life, you dumbass. You do realize all them donations that you gave him finances his life. He's not really successful. He's just using the market, basically. He's basically just using a bunch of other men, sadly. It's sad, but it's true. So at the end of the day, you're being manipulated by a lot of other people to do stupid shit to basically fill their own coffers. That's pretty much the nature of the beast, whether you like it or not. This is the philosophical Tico 2. Discipline and standards. Always find your standards and always have discipline. The more discipline you have, the less likely you're going to be manipulated into doing shit. Because you have the discipline, you'll always have the discipline to control yourself from doing impulsive things or going into stupid things because you think it's a great idea and you think it might be a great idea to drop money on. Let it be pickup artistry, let it be, buying this supplement or drink that, can raise your testosterone, anything like that, sadly. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is all that shit is shit, whether you like it or not. Any of that shit, it really doesn't help you. You shouldn't have to spend exorbitant amount of money to be able to do stupid shit, sadly. If you had the proper male role model in your life, you wouldn't even be spending half this damn money, sadly. So just think of it like that. But this is Tico Tre Red Pill. Treat yourselves like milk, do nothing but spoil yourselves. Always be a better version of yourselves. no matter what, no matter who hates you, who's hating on you. Always do you, be on your purpose, and be on your grind, and never stop grinding, basically. Y'all be blessed, have a good one, and I'm happy to serve the manosphere. Adios.
That's my baby girl right there. Ooh, she with her friends. I'm a dog, I ain't shit. I'ma wind up hitting her friends. Bad guy, outlaw. Ooh, I'm like Pac, but I ain't die after the second time I got shot.